On this episode of the iFilmmaker podcast, we're talking about the new Sony A1 with Dave Mays. Welcome back to another episode of the iFilmmaker podcast. My name's Ariel Martinez. This is an exciting one. Sony has announced their new Alpha One camera, which is kind of confusing, came out of left field in my opinion. So I invited my friend Dave Mays to come on the show. Dave Mays is one of the hosts of the Indy Mogul YouTube channel. He knows a lot about cameras, knows a lot about tech. So we're going to discuss what this camera is all about, the price point, who it's targeted for. We're going to discover all of that on this episode. Thank you guys for joining us. Don't forget to like, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube or iTunes, listening, or Spotify, wherever you're listening to your podcast. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Let's go ahead and invite Dave Mays on the show, and we're going to discuss this together. Dave Mays, welcome back to the iFilmmaker podcast. How are you, buddy?
Dude, thank you so much for having me. Here I am in the Indy Mogul set, as you can see behind me. So
I love it. I love it. Your audio always sounds so good. I love having guests that audio sounds so good.
Although for our listeners, probably sounds like garbage right now because I am actually talking to you on my iPhone.
You didn't have to give
recording
that away.
separate. It's magic. I'm revealing the magic trick behind the curtain.
The magic trick.
Yeah.
Oh man. So dude, crazy day.
I know.
Crazy day. Thoughts and emotions all over the place. Of course, we're talking about the newly announced Sony A1.
President of United States.
We can't.
The brand new.
We can't tug on that one.
Yeah. The fairly elected president of the United States. Okay, no. Say that all again. I'm sorry.
Oh man, I'm gonna leave that in there. That's all good. Oh, that's good. That's good. All right. This. Hold on. Let me gather myself.
I'm sorry I threw you off.
No, you're good. The Sony Alpha One.
Yes.
Out of left field.
Totally. They
when
had
people-
rumors about this, like on Alpha Rumors, like 2 days ago. I didn't
Did
even
they
know
really?
about it. No, nothing about the camera, but there was, at least some sort of tease about, the one or whatever. But I didn't know what to expect. This is really exciting.
I don't think anybody did, because when people kept asking me, I thought it was going to be the next A7R.
Yeah.
Personally, or something AC, the Sony Alpha C. I forgot which one that one was, but
The A7C?
A7C. I'm sorry. So I thought it was an upgraded A7C or an A7R. Oh my goodness, I'm having such a
Well, what is
crazy
it? The
brain fart right now.
There's the A7, the A7R, the A9, the A7C, and of course the A7S line. I think this camera, the A1, I've been calling it A1 sauce all day, and we've been seeing memes about that.
I know. That's funny.
But I do think that this, they're not saying this, but I think it's replacing the A9 line, because previously the A9 and the A9 Mark II were kind of the 1DX competitor, the flagship, if you will, for photographers. And I guess they changed the name to be A1 to kind of be similar to Canon, like the 1D series of cameras. This is the one, from Sony. And this camera has the crazy high burst rate for photography, the crazy good autofocus. It's got the Ethernet port for, tethering. It's got a lot of the features that those high-end sports journalists, photographers are always wanting, but it's a large megapixel count, which has never really been done in these high-speed cameras before. Usually the 1D series has like a 20, 30 megapixel sensor. Like it's usually kind of in between sensor, because a lot of sports shooters don't want massive megapixel count. So I don't know. It's interesting. It seems like it is like the perfect kind of camera for somebody who were to shoot NFL or the Olympics, but it's also got 8K recording and a Cinetone color profile. So is it like a better camera than the A7S? And like they didn't even mention anything about low light. I'm sure it'll be good, but obviously the A7S is going to be better. But
Yeah,
there's a lot to talk about. I'll let you.
so much. Yeah, there's so much to unpack here with this camera. So off the bat, I mean, 8K recording up to 30 frames per second. You got the 4K 120 at 10-bit, just like the A7S. Just incredible amounts of megapixels for this. Now,
50 megapixels, 50.1.
50.1 megapixels. I was looking, and it seems like the ISO range goes up to 120, 104,000, something like that.
Wow.
So not quite as much as the...
my chair just synced. You're going to have to put that in the video there. I'm trying to adjust my seat. It's like rocking back and forth, and I just dropped the whole thing.
I'm totally adding that blooper.
Okay, I'm here.
If that looks funny, I'm going to add it. So... about 104,000 roughly ISO that it goes up to, and I don't even know if that's the extended ISO, but that's what they had on B&H. That's about a quarter as much as the A7S III has.
Oh, that's plenty. I mean, the A7S III goes higher than most ever need, honestly.
Yeah, so. No, absolutely. I don't think I even go higher than 20,000 ISO, but regardless, it's it's really, really good in low light.
Yeah. I'm excited this happened. I feel like it's definitely, people are going to complain about certain things. And of course the price is a big issue with people, I guess you could say. But I love the idea of Sony. Sony is so advanced. They have so much technology that they were like, let's just forget about what this is going to cost and just put everything that we can possibly put in one camera, and like we'll put a price tag on it that will justify all of the technology that we're putting into it. And if you think it's too expensive, then buy an A7R. If it doesn't have the video features you want, then the A7S is obviously a better video camera for most people. You know, me personally, if somebody said one A1 or two A7S IIIs, I know the price isn't exactly the same, but of course I would pick two A7S IIIs over the one A1. However, as a dad who has kids that like run around like crazy, got two toddlers, I would love to have blazing fast autofocus and to like shoot 30 frames per second with no blackout. That'd be sick for like taking pictures of my kids with high resolution stills. But like, I'm not going to spend that kind of money. What is it? $6,500 US for the camera?
$6,500.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's more than the C70 that I'm shooting on right now for this video.
For those of you that are not watching in video, Dave Mays is on the C70.
Yes, sir. I just got it last week. I love it. That's another topic, but we'll talk about it.
That is another topic. We'll squeeze that one in there for sure.
I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Like Sony just kind of throwing everything they have technology-wise into one body, and do you like that they did that?
I've been kind of torn. I mean, it's obviously not a camera that I would get on the price tag alone, but that's only because of what I need for my work. Like you said, I would rather get another A7S III to have as a B cam.
Dude, let's slow clap for the A7S III. It's been, a couple months now, 6 months. What a workhorse this camera is. I love that camera.
That's what I'm shooting on right now. The A7S III is one of the most incredible cameras I have ever encountered.
1,000%.
Ever. It's really hard to beat it. It's just an incredible workhorse. I use it way more than I use my FX9.
Wow.
And
that's saying a lot. Yeah.
That is, no, absolutely is saying a lot. And it's just an incredible camera. So, and it easily matches up as a B cam for the FX9. Super, super easy.
But now this A1 has S Cinetone. What do you think of that? Like, and what does that even mean? Is that a
So,
higher end color profile?
Not
I
really.
used the Venice 6K, and I was able to match it to the A7S with
Yes.
my Indy Mogul video, and I know that has S Cine, obviously,
Yeah.
but is it just more dynamic range, better color science? What is it?
So the S Cinetone profile, as much as people rave about it, I'm not a fan of it. The colors are beautiful, but I do not like losing that much dynamic range. Um,
What do
it's
you mean? You lose dynamic range?
a ton,
Really?
because you're baking in the contrast. You're baking
Okay.
in that exposure. So if I'm shooting through a window, but I need to keep my subject exposed that's indoor, that window is going to be blown out. So my camera does not change from S-Log 3. I rather
Okay.
just throw on a LUT and adjust accordingly. But
I didn't
with
realize it was like a profile, like a baked in profile. I thought it was just kind of a
oh no,
more
it's
cinema version of S Log.
no. S-Cinetone is essentially you're shooting in standard mode on the
Oh,
camera.
okay.
It's just better skin tones. Like it's much better.
But you can
But
just color grade that in, right? Like,
right, exactly. So you're better off just shooting S-Log 3. Don't S-Cinetone is not the 14, 15 stops of dynamic range that a camera would give you. It's
copy.
bringing that dynamic range down to about 9. You're losing
Oh,
an
wow.
incredible amount of dynamic range, and that's not recoverable. S-Cinetone is meant to deliver footage if your client just needs everything in camera. And even then, I would prefer, like when I'm shooting, I mean, I don't have S-Cinetone on the A7S III, but even then, I would prefer to just bring it down to S-Log 2 and just bring up the turn up the
Yeah.
contrast a little bit, turn up the saturation a little bit. I don't like to bake things in and lose dynamic range. I personally don't like that. I rather have the entirety of what the camera has to offer, and I decide how much contrast, saturation, and all that I need in post. I just
Well,
rather
hopefully
have
you're
that
not mad at me.
flexibility.
I'm shooting baked in right now on the C70, so.
Well, I trust your judgment.
I
Your videos always look good, so you should be fine
Okay.
on that.
bake I bake everything in because I'm a YouTuber and I hate
Right.
color grading. So
Listen, no,
I would love
absolutely.
to have
Yeah.
S Cinetone on it. I wish they had it on the A7S, even as just an option. You know?
I feel like that's something that they can add in a firmware update, maybe.
Yeah.
That's something that
But
they have the option to do.
So who's this camera actually for? And do we want to actually go over all the specs? I feel like we've kind of been going around the horse here.
Yeah.
You want to just read them off maybe,
Yeah.
and then we could talk more about it? Or
Yeah. Do you have it pulled up in front of you?
yeah, I do.
Yeah. Can you go ahead and let's go over those specs?
Cool. So like we said earlier, it's a 50.1 megapixel sensor. And by the way, what are the specs of the new A7R camera?
The A7R camera. I didn't even know that was even announced.
Isn't that No. I mean, what is it? The most recent one is the A7R4, right? Like that's been out for a while. Okay, so the specs for the A7R4, I think it's like 60 megapixels, so it's not as good as as this one technically.
Wait.
It's still
The A7R4 60 megapixels. That's better than the A1.
exactly, yeah. But the A1 has. That's what I'm saying. Is it's not the A1 isn't as good as
Sorry. I thought
the R.
got
But
me confused.
but here's the thing. So I'm just going to go over the specs. 50 megapixel full frame BSI CMOS sensor, up to 30 frames per second shooting, and that's referring to pictures.
Stills,
so that
right.
You're taking raw stills at 30 frames per second. I wonder what the buffer is on that.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I wonder how long I could keep that up.
But you got ISO 50 to 102,400.
Mm-hmm.
Here's our little video spec here. 8K at 30 frames per second and 4K at 120, which you mentioned, in 10-bit. So this is great. 4.3K 16-bit raw video output. I didn't realize it was more than 4K. You get a little extra room there. That's nice.
Yeah, well, it's an 8K sensor apparently.
Yeah. S Cinetone, obviously, like we just said.
Right.
9.44 million dot EVF with 240 FPS refresh rate. I think that's the same one as the A7S.
A7S3.
Which is
yep.
Yeah, which is really good. I love that EVF.
Beautiful. Mm-hmm.
759 point fast hybrid autofocus, real-time eye AF, 5-axis steady shot image stabe, dual drive mechanical shutter up to 1/400th second sync, 5 gigahertz MIMO Wi-Fi. Oh, it has 5G in it in the camera.
Yeah. So check this out. That is probably their highlight feature for this camera. So now they're catering to a little bit of broadcasting also.
Interesting. I've been waiting for this to happen. I think 5G can change the game with cameras.
So they released this along with their phone.
Yep.
I'm blanking on the name, but
Xperia Pro something or other, right?
Right. So the phone is $2,500 though. That's an additional in addition to the $6,000. So now you have a $9,000 setup
without a lens, by the way.
Without a lens. So now you have a $9,000 setup without a lens, that it's fully capable of broadcasting live directly from the camera with the attachment of this phone that would go onto the camera.
Okay.
It has an Ethernet cable. It has an Ethernet jack that connects directly to that phone. And it has this new software where you can literally broadcast 4K, everything that you're streaming, broadcast it through YouTube, whatever it is.
I like that.
It's awesome. It sounds amazing. I would.
Yeah, but you and me do that already with an Elgato and. But this makes it mobile, so like you can be in the field reporting something. So, but aren't there other? Doesn't like
Teradek?
Aren't there Teradek?
Yeah.
Does this
So
already.
Teradek has it. They have this. Basically a box that's like $400 that you can get, attach it through HDMI to your camera, and you have a mobile live streaming camera right there, and you can connect that to any camera.
So what you're saying is you could buy 5 of those and still be less than just the phone.
Oh yeah. You can get that if you already have a couple of cameras connected to the cameras, and you control that with the app.
And then it's by the way, to finish up the specs, it's a dual CF Express Type A SD card, which we see in the A7S. So that's it for the main specs.
Right.
So why is this camera so expensive then?
I believe that, man, it's getting the best of every world. The best of the A7S III minus the incredible low light. I think the A7S III just has a slight edge on the low light.
And minus the flip screen.
Oh, that's a big thing. Minus the flip screen. That's a big downer for a lot of people. So, so it's taking the best of the A7S III minus those two things. The best of the A7R minus 10 megapixels apparently.
It's okay. That's negligible. Nobody's gonna care.
Right. And it's adding the capability of broadcasting live to sending a live feed over to a mixer, to a video switcher for somebody that's doing live via that Ethernet port.
And it's got 8K.
And it's got 8K capabilities. So if you really need to get that extra resolution for product photography, whatever you need, it has it. It's close.
So the R5, the Canon R5 is $38.99, and that has a lot of similar features: high megapixel, good burst rate, great for photography.
Yeah,
it does 8K. Apparently, the Sony is overheating at 30 minutes on the 8K, is what I saw on Twitter. So it's also having overheating issues. Just
is
like
it
the
really?
Canon.
I haven't even heard of that.
I would imagine that
the
it'll.
A1?
That's what I saw on Twitter. I don't know if that was a meme. It might be a meme. Nobody has any time with it.
Right.
Like,
of course.
I'm sure that'll be.
I'm actually surprised that I haven't.
I'm sure they learned from Canon.
Well, they have a completely different system, is why they're not overheating even at 120 frames per second in 4K. They have a different type of sensor, a different kind of cooling system. It's a dual sensor. Dual processor, I'm sorry. Dual processor inside the camera, which is able to keep it cool, which is what they released with the A7S III. I believe they have the same sort of type of processor in this body, which is why I don't think it's going to overheat.
I hope not.
I hope not too, but
So
regardless, I'm not getting it, so I don't care. But
so it's
I don't
so
expect it to overheat.
the
Put it that way.
So again, if we're going to compare, so this is the Filmmaker podcast. So, but let's just get this out of the way. It's a great photography camera. I could totally see like
Yeah.
sports and journalists getting this because of the high burst rate and the really good autofocus and the high megapixels.
Right.
But as filmmakers, it's interesting because now it goes up against the R5, which is capable of doing 8K RAW. I know it overheats, but the R5 does do RAW, not just standard 8K. And a Monstro VistaVision 8K costs $54,500 from Red. So if we're talking about apples to apples or apples to oranges to pears, technically, the R5, the A7, or the A1, the R5, and then the Red Monstro VistaVision, these are the 8K cameras on the market. I guess you could throw the Blackmagic 12K in there if you want to throw that in the mix. That's kind of like in between the Red. Yeah, Blackmagic
10,000
has the 12K. So if you're a filmmaker, does this make sense to buy this camera? It does 8K video with S-Log 3 10-bit internal in a hybrid body. Do you think filmmakers should be at all considering this camera?
I think that it obviously it depends on necessities. If you need a camera that does absolutely everything you need it to do, sure, consider it. If you're like me that just needs to freelance on video work, I don't need the photography features. That really doesn't kind of compel me. So
what about 8K? Is that interesting to you for interviews to have the ability to crop and keep 4K resolution the whole time?
Most of the time I'm getting asked for 1080p delivery. So even the 4K
is good for you.
It's perfect.
I guess the answer then is really, if you're a video person, if you're a filmmaker, and 8K isn't necessary for you at all, then buy the A7S III.
Yeah, so
it's pretty simple, really.
Right. 8K, in my opinion, I don't think it's necessary for just about most people. There are some instances where 8K would look really nice for certain shots, but those shots are few and far between. If you're doing stuff that requires, a lot of VFX and more resolution in VFX, if I'm not mistaken, is a good thing, then yeah.
But if you're doing that, at that scale, you're talking about Hollywood, you're talking about multi-million-dollar productions, they're not going to buy this camera. They're going to use a Red.
Well, yeah, but the point is that I can get that in my little indie film, I don't need to get the Red to get the higher resolution. I can get this in the small package. So that's what I mean. Well,
then if we're playing that game, then why not get the R5, which is cheaper and does raw 8K?
Because I want a reliable camera. So that's one of the things where
to be honest, that remains to be seen. We don't know, really.
I agree. Absolutely, I agree. But one thing I did notice though is that they didn't put so much emphasis like Canon did on their 8K.
You're right.
It's a soft 8K. Right. They mentioned it, and it might have a record limit. Listen, I'm fine with that, but Canon was all about the 8K. It's their headline feature on the R5. Come to show, it's only good for a few minutes and you're done. And then the more you use it, the longer that wait time is before you can record again. So those are the limitations. So my whole thing is know the limitations. I'm not against manufacturers coming out with limited record times and overheat, but just be straightforward about it. Is it usable or is it not? Because I need to make a decision whether to buy this camera or not. Is it going to get in my way? If I know that I can only record for 20 minutes, then after that, I have to wait 10 minutes before I can hit record again. and then it's only going to record for 15 minutes next time, but then I have to wait another 30 minutes before I can record another 10 minutes. That's not going to cut it for me. You know, in no press release did Canon ever say any of that. In this time, Sony simply mentioned the 8K, but that was not their highlight feature. Their highlights feature was still, it's a solid camera that would give you solid image, amazing autofocus, all the autofocus points, the viewfinder, the recording formats, all that stuff was what it really catered to. Also, the 5G, the live streaming, like those are the features that they were really focusing on, as opposed to AK. So it's a different type of delivery. This is probably what Canon would have stuck to if they would have not emphasized the AK and maybe even said this is a solid photography camera, which is also, I didn't mention that, Sony mentioned that as well. They said they stuck on how amazing the 50.1 megapixels is going to look in your image. Look how you can crop into this image. And that's what they were really focusing on. And I think that that is what may or may not make this, because the price tag is just hard to overlook. That's a lot of freaking money for a camera.
I do think the market is those 1D users, the people that, I think, you know, the 1D series has always been in the $5,000 price bracket. So I don't think it'll make those high end like photographers flinch. You know, if you're a portrait photographer, you want that high megapixel, that reliability. If you're tethered in a studio, you know, or you're shooting the Olympics, I don't think the price will, but then it seems as though, you're
paying more because it has that the added features of the 4K 120 and the live broadcasting. If that's not important to you, then just go for the A7R. Yeah, you know, because that's already included in the A7. So that's my thing. Like, this is catered towards somebody that wants to offer all of that stuff without compromise. Right? Yeah. Or at least with minimal compromise.
So how would you compare this in a car, if you were to compare it to a car lineup? What kind of manufacturer would this car be compared to the R and the A7S?
Well,
Is this the Rolls-Royce of Sony's products?
No, it's because Rolls-Royce is not catering to people that love SUVs. You know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah, the Rolls-Royce for cameras would be a Leica or a Hasselblad, right?
Kind of, yes, exactly. So Rolls-Royce is a very niche market. You know, they're really going for that perfect camera, right? And this might let's say this is the perfect camera, but the thing is that price tag it's hard to overlook. So unless
it'll go down in a year or two, probably.
Yeah, maybe by $500. I think that this camera would be at a reasonable price if they left it at $5,000. That's perfectly reasonable for everything that it offers.
$4,999, right?
Exactly.
That would look good.
998. Get it right.
Yeah, exactly.
So
that makes sense, because that would be $1,000 more than the R5, and I think it seems like this is worth an extra $1,000 on top of what the R5 is giving you.
And think about it, to even take advantage of the live streaming features, you have to get that $2,500 phone that you need to sort of broadcast it, you know? At the same time, you could get, I'm sure if Teradek comes out with the 5G capable kind of Ethernet, I don't know how that kind of connects, but you can still get a Teradek with this camera. So, you know, you're not only stuck with that phone.
So
if you want to
so I'm a YouTuber. I make a lot of videos on YouTube, and one of the dreams for me would be to have 5G in your camera, to where I could be out with a shooter doing a review, and I could have a full-time editor who's at the office, and as I'm shooting, those files, maybe even a proxy file to make it faster, would be uploading to Dropbox or like to the cloud somehow, for an editor to literally begin editing as I'm shooting. So as my shooter's hitting record and cut, when he hits cut, it's just instantly going to the cloud. That would be so cool, right? To like
have
sure.
Pay somebody $9,000 and you got that.
Is that what it is capable of doing, or is it's kind of like a live stream? It's not necessarily like uploading your files.
From what I understand, and what I saw on the video, it's meant for live streaming. However, I can totally see, maybe I missed the part where you can upload video clips like that. I feel like I may have, but I'm not sure.
That'd be cool.
That would be a great feature to have. In the same way, so I do believe they had a part there in the video where you can literally view the videos uploading that you just took on the app that they have and transfer it to your phone. So there should be a way to do that. If not, I'm sure they're working on it, but I can see that as a very good possibility that could happen.
So I have a podcast, and you were on it. It's called the Golden Hour Podcast.
Golden Hour Podcast.
I interviewed recently Hayden Hillier-Smith, who's the editor for Logan Paul, and
nice.
I could see on a high end scale with these YouTubers like him who like are doing content just so quickly, having something like that where the editor could be, for Logan Paul, there's only an editor and a shooter, and then Logan. That's it. There's only 3 people. And I could see this type of thing being such a useful tool for them, because he could literally be shooting, and like we just said, when he's done shooting, it's being uploaded, and then the editor can just start right away with the footage. I mean, that really would open up the door for Hollywood even to rush out dailies, to have an editor or a colorist working on a LUT while you're shooting. Like, if 5G becomes a thing for filmmaking, it could really seriously be a powerful tool for filmmakers in terms of workflow.
Yeah, definitely. So the technology itself, I think, has potential for sure. I actually didn't even think about it that way. As you're hitting record, and then you're stopping that recording, that clip could be automatically getting uploaded onto a server where someone else on the other end is now getting that clip and adding it to the library of clips
Could you imagine how Hollywood could use that, for reality TV, for all sorts of things in terms of organization, in terms of just efficiency? It would, I mean, it's just like when we went from tape to SD cards. Like, do you remember capturing tape from camcorders?
Never.
To plug it into you never did it?
No,
I was right on the tail end of that in my career, but
no, when I started, my church was getting upgraded to new cameras, and I see their old cameras that required tape. So I didn't get to
You're lucky.
the privilege.
Basically, you would have to sit through, if you had an advanced system, you could do like 2x speed, but you would have to actually sit through everything you shot. So say you shot an hour's worth of content, it would take an hour to transfer it, because it would just real time capture the footage onto your computer. So when SD cards came out and CF cards, it was like amazing that I could take 4 hours of content and transfer it to my computer in like 10 minutes, over USB. It would be that type of shift in technology. I mean, I guess for film, it's like developing film,
right,
and then scanning the film. That's such a long process. Being able to literally upload your clips as you're shooting them to your editor would be game changing.
I mean, that could also explain why the price tag is so high. To have that kind of technology in the camera, that it's 5G ready. I think that could probably add to the price tag, because it's relatively new technology. So I can see that being a thing, being the reason why. But even then, like, I think that, I think a lot of people are still going to pass on this camera, in my opinion. Yeah. I'm predicting that that's what's going to happen. Because
I don't like. Mm-hmm. Go ahead. Sorry, I'm cutting you off too much. Go ahead.
No, you're good. No, it's just my own prediction for this camera.
I agree.
I think a lot of people are going to forego it. The flip out screen is a big thing.
Huge we're thing. back to the old mirror or the Joshio break your camera thing where it flips down. Did you ever see that where he broke his Sony camera so that it could actually flip down?
Yes, that's right. He took it off the hinge, and
You're not gonna want to void your warranty on a $6,500 Sony camera.
no, nope.
But
Nope.
I saw Jesse Driftwood on Twitter. He was like, why is Sony still using this body? Like, I know that they've designed it and it's a pretty good body, but I feel like Sony could still work on their ergonomics on their camera bodies.
Mhm.
And it was a shame to see that, like, they're just using the same frame that they've used for everything. I mean, again, I don't want to bash it too much because I love how the A7S III feels in the hand, but I do think they could work on the ergonomics and continue to advance that. They're just kind of recycling the same body they already have.
Yeah, it seems like that. But that's a good point. Probably something that I never notice, just because every now, like, I need cameras to work for me, and I've never found that to be an issue with the way that I kind of shoot. I've never kind of even thought of the ergonomics. I will say this though, with the cage on my A7S III, hitting that record button sucks. And just the placement of it, I have to get around the cage and kind of find it there in the front. I wish that it was programmable to a different button, but
You can put on the shutter button.
Can you do that?
Yeah, it's a menu.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You
I
learn
would
a lot on
recommend
this podcast.
what was I going to say too? Just on the price point conversation again.
Yeah.
I think Sony is aware that the people who need this camera can afford it, because the people who need this camera are high-end customers. And if you have the money, everything we've just said, if you have the money and you're in this demographic, this is the perfect camera. I don't want to glaze over the fact that this camera is fantastic. Like, it's mind-blowingly good. Everything that we're saying is just us having commentary about some of the issues we're having. But let's just, like, absorb the fact that this camera is pumping out specs that would be astronomically mind-blowing just 5 years ago, just 2 years ago. I mean, this is really exciting for sure. And you know that this technology will trickle down. And when you look at tech companies like Apple, for example, you can see sometimes they'll charge more for some of their higher end products because they know the only people buying, say, the iPad Pro, for example, are people who need the power and want, the speed and the performance.
Mm-hmm.
And then over time, they trickle that down to their lower end models. So now you can buy the iPad Air, which is using the same Apple Pencil. It's using the same keyboard as the iPad Pro. And it's like half the price now. Same for the iPhone SE 2 came out last year. They're using the same processor in that phone that is in the top end phone from last year. So, like, there was a period of time where I had an iPhone SE 2. I paid $300 for it, and it had the exact same processor in it as the $1,000 iPhone 11 Pro. And so they're able to kind of diversify their lineup, and they're able to use the funds that they're making from the expensive cameras to go into research and development, to also ramp up production to put those processors and put that technology in the cheaper, more affordable kind of everyday carry cameras. So the fact that this camera exists is great. And I think moving forward, the A1 Mark II, the A1 Mark III, like, if they continue this line, it's always going to be the expensive flagship that does the tech that is almost too out of reach for you. Like, this camera is definitely future proof. If you buy it now, it's going to last you 5 years easy. But by the time that comes, a lot of this technology might be sift down to the cheaper end cameras, but that's what you pay. You pay that price point to get the cutting edge tech that isn't in any of the kind of budget friendly options. So that's why it's so expensive, is you're paying for that access to technology that just, like, this is future tech that we're getting. This is stuff that we should see in 2 years, but we're getting it now for $6,500.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you're making. But when I think of this and actual professionals, from what I understand, the pros in our industry and other industries, they specialize. So I specialize in video. I don't offer photography, nor do I advertise it. Photographers specialize in photos. They don't offer video, nor do they advertise it. People that are in broadcasting, they stick to broadcasting. This is a camera that checks off all those boxes, but somebody that is doing broadcasting is not going to want to pay the extra money that you would get because it also has great megapixels and great video features. You know, they want a camera that's dedicated to that. People that are doing photography, they're not going to want to pay the extra money to get a camera that is also really good for broadcasting, because that they don't care about broadcasting. So that is probably, you get what I'm saying? So my point is, the professionals that are professionals on all three industries, they need a camera that really dedicates to their own industry. So where does that leave? So I'm just thinking about it as there's
no flip screen, so I'm not going to buy one because there's no flip screen on it.
So a vlogger or a YouTuber is not going to get it.
Well, I was going to say, like, a high-end YouTuber, it does have all the features that a high-end, like, internet personality needs. Like, I want a high-resolution photography camera for thumbnails and Instagram.
How many of those are there? You know what I mean? So
not many. It's
not for the average professional. And I mean,
you're right, yeah.
Even YouTuber is not for the average YouTuber. It has to specialize to somebody, but just again, this is why I'm predicting that this camera is not going to do very well.
Well,
because it's trying to cater to every single market.
Did you do a poll on your Instagram yet on Filmmaker?
No, but I saw yours, and I saw the percentage.
Yep, I saw Jason Vong. It gave me the idea because I saw Jason do it, and he obviously has a huge Sony following.
Right.
And he had the same skew where it was like 80% of people are not interested in this camera.
Right.
And I also saw on Sony Alpha Rumors, he had a poll on the website saying, are you going to buy this camera? And it was like 90% said no. So
because I cannot justify the camera if I need to pay that much money.
It's also COVID, so
no, but that's not, because this has been 2020 was the year of new cameras being purchased, like, for some reason, despite COVID. So that's not the reason.
Yeah, it's true.
So I just don't think, again, you know, the polls say it as well. It's not catering to one, like, man, that's why there's a reason.
Maybe that's why it's so expensive, because it's a niche camera. It's a true hybrid camera. This camera is the perfect, on paper, hybrid tool. It does really high-end video, and it does really high-end photography with no compromises.
Yeah.
So this really is the ultimate hybrid.
I feel like I've been bashing the camera a lot. Phenomenal camera. I don't want to take anything away from this camera. Just giving my predictions. However, for those that, you know, people that are getting into this industry, right, and they don't know whether to get a camera that's good for video, or because it's been the A7S, A7R, right? Canon also has their back and forth, and Panasonic has their back and forth as well. A good video camera, good stills camera. This camera does good both. You don't have to compromise. It's
not
like getting
good, great. It does great both. Like it's
it does great both.
50 megapixel stills at 30 frames per second with no dropout.
That's incredible.
That's unheard of.
That's incredible.
Yeah. 8K
I haven't
video,
been highlighting that because I'm
incredible.
not a photographer, but yeah, just thinking about it, 30 frames per second stills, that's unheard of. That really
with
is
no blackout.
In RAW.
So,
the blackout thing is something I never kind of experienced.
So blackout, it's basically, it feels like you're just looking through the viewfinder and you're holding the shutter down, and it'll just look like you're just looking at video. And you know, Sony's autofocus system is so good that it'll just detect the eye and just stay on it. And so I've been seeing a lot of sports examples in all the promotions for this camera.
Right.
And they're not going to just make this camera with no research. Like, they obviously, they're not just spending all this time creating this camera without any type of R&D and like research on who this is for.
Yep.
So my guess is that there is a hole in the market for a high megapixel sports camera for people who also need the ability to shoot high quality video. And I think because they needed such powerful processors to do 30 FPS raw photo with no blackout at 50 megapixels, because you have to have such beefy processors just to do that for stills. It's like, might as well throw 8K in there because we can, you know?
I agree. That is their market for sure. And you're absolutely right, because I have shot professional sports. I've shot NFL games. I've shot NBA games. And that stuff, that media room in the back, they're getting that stuff as fast as possible, so that they can post it fast.
And the 5G would be perfect for that too, for those types of users, wouldn't it?
Exactly. You'll notice when an NBA game or an NFL game is going into a commercial break, they always have a highlight of the very last play that just happened. Like, how do they get that so fast and cut up so fast? So this can streamline that work.
You know, I think I just said it, but I'm realizing I think that was my aha. This is a sports camera.
Yeah.
And because to do stills at that level, it requires such processing. That's why 8K is there, because they just can do it.
Right.
So I don't, and because it doesn't have a flip screen on it, that makes me think that it was never. It does have S-Cinetone, and maybe because, like you said, S-Cinetone is a great baked-in profile. Photographers don't know how to shoot video, so it's like, I'll just switch on to this S-Cinetone profile for my video shots, and then a photographer can actually get a really good quality video without any experience in color grading.
Right. So I think we figured it out. I think that's why it's catered to them, because it's not catered to vloggers, is because most vloggers are not going to buy this.
They've already made a bunch of cameras for vloggers. The A7C is the perfect budget, YouTuber camera. It's got a flip screen. It's small. It's compact. It's full frame. Autofocus is great. Color science is improved.
Yeah.
There you go. There's your vlog camera. Your high-end video camera is the A7S. It's perfect. Like, I have no complaints with that camera.
Yep.
This camera is the 1D version for them. This is their flagship photography camera.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think we found the niche that they were going for, which it made all of us confused, really, because we're not in that niche.
No,
but I think that this was a good.
I have a buddy
for it to figure that out.
I should connect you to my friend Jamie. He's a professional car photographer. He goes to he'll go to motocross events. He'll go to NASCAR events. He'll go to the Indy 500, and he does car, high action car photography. And he's I think he's a Nikon guy. I think he shoots on the D4 or whatever. It's like their flagship. And so there's lots of people out there who need this. And again, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, the high-end sports cameras are always a lower megapixel count. So this really is filling a void in the lineup of higher and higher megapixels are being needed more now.
Right.
So and the 1D series is only 24 megapixels. So I think that's really where this is going to just stand out, and it's outperforming the R5 in photography features. So again, I think I'm done. I think I figured it out. It's a photography camera.
I think we figured it out. I think that was
you're right.
That was a really good back and forth there. Talk to me about your C70. How are you liking that?
I'm loving it. I'll go up close to the lens here so you can see. The autofocus is so great. It's perfect. It works great. Color science is great. I got it because we're a Canon place. So, I'm working with people who are only shooting on Canon cameras. We have a ton of EF lenses. My biggest beef with this camera is it's not full frame. It's a Super 35 sensor, which, no big deal. It's only been the industry standard for 100 years for video. Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with that. But I wish that it was a full frame sensor, because it uses a full frame mount. It uses the new Canon RF mount, which is obviously designed for the R mirrorless bodies. So if I'm going to use this camera natively with the best lenses that Canon makes, the R lenses, I'm cropping in on them. And I would love to get the full use of that lens.
Right.
The great thing is you can buy a speed booster either through Metabones or Canon has one now that I'm actually using right now. It's a 0.71x booster that goes from RF to EF.
Nice.
So I'm shooting right now on a 24-70 EF f2.8 lens, and it's close to full frame. I think it's a 1.2 or 1.3x crop. It's not a true 1x, but that certainly helps, and you gain an extra stop of light. But I don't want to shoot EF. EF is old, and EF is discontinued, and Canon's not making and developing EF lenses anymore. Obviously, EF lenses are widely available. It's one of the most available lens mounts out there ever. But I want RF. RF is the new future. So if I want RF, then I'm cropping in on my lens, and Canon doesn't make crop censored lenses for RF. So it's kind of a dilemma, but whatever. I just kind of forget about it, and
Right.
I love the color science. I love the ease of use with it. I'm able to shoot proxy on one card and full 10-bit 4K 422 on the other card.
That's awesome.
And so that's been my workflow, is I shoot 10-bit on one and C-Log 2, which is their flattest profile. It's like 13, 14 stops of DR.
So I just found out that my FX9 is capable of doing that, and it kind of blew my mind.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I could do that. I'm like,
You
wow,
should.
that's awesome. So
It's so easy. In Final
you-
Cut, just relink your proxies.
do you know if the A7S III does that?
It does.
It does.
Yeah, just go in there, turn on proxy mode. It'll record it in a separate folder, and yeah, I've told all my friends to do it, because you're killing your computer if you don't do that.
Does it record? Could it record both at the same time though?
Yeah,
Both
yeah.
full quality and proxy. And does it record?
That would suck if it only recorded proxy.
You don't want that.
So it puts it in a folder. I think you can. I don't know if you can put one on one card and one on the other. I think on the A7S it's all on the same card.
Really?
But it doesn't matter.
Okay.
It matches the file name and everything.
Sure.
And do you use Final Cut or Premiere?
Premiere Pro.
I forget.
Okay,
so yeah, Premiere
what real
is.
editors use.
Oh, shut up. So it doesn't matter. Both of them do it, but you load in your raw
Right.
footage, and then you can just relink the proxy, and you don't have to make it because it's already been made for
That's
you.
fantastic.
Which saves a ton of time.
I've never. You'd be surprised. I don't think I've never used proxies. But I've had a couple of clients that have they've requested me to send them proxies through Dropbox while the real footage is in the mail,
Nice.
so they can start
Yeah.
editing. So that's
That's a great way to
awesome
do
that
it.
I have that option now.
You should absolutely do it. I think you can even bake in. I think on your FX9 you can actually bake in a color profile as well if you wanted to, if you're working with a client.
On a proxy,
I believe so.
but
Yeah.
not on the original.
Yeah, exactly. You
Got
keep
it.
your
That's
S-Log original, but then you can do like a Rec 709 on the proxy so that clients can
Got it.
not just be like, why is it all gray?
That's awesome.
So-
I gotta look more into that, because that is
But
a really awesome feature to have.
But I definitely think the C70, I think the FX9 isn't really a competitor to it. It's more like the FX6, I think, the new Sony cinema
yeah.
camera. But even with that, though, I do think the C70 is a little bit more in that A7S III category, because it's a small body and it's got a really nice just built-in flip screen that makes it feel a lot like just kind of a DSLR.
Right.
And it's got the built-in ND. The autofocus is just perfect.
Yeah, it's
Battery life is great.
It's like in between. It's like
Yeah,
in between.
So I've really enjoyed it. It's a shame that it doesn't do any photo. I would love if it even just took an 8-megapixel raw still, and then that'd be the perfect camera for me, because all I ever need is just to take a thumbnail picture. So I do carry around my Olympus camera for photography.
So you do own the A7S III?
No, I don't own it.
Oh, okay.
I've shot a lot with it. We've rented it for Indy Mogul. I've done reviews. A lot of my friends have it. I was considering buying one, but now I have this camera and it's better for my use case.
Got it.
Somewhat. I still jealously want the A7S, but then I'd have to get all new lenses, and I'm taking the more reasonable adult decision here with this camera. But
yeah, that was the best decision I ever made, man. Because originally I bought the A7S III, but at the time I had an FS7 and the FS5
Yeah.
and the A6600, all crop sensor cameras. I
Yeah.
had maybe one full frame lens, and that was a 24 to 70, 24 to 105
Yeah.
at the time. I
Yeah.
had no full frame glass. When I got the A7S III, I'm like, okay, I kind of want to take advantage, and I want to use full frame glass. I
Sure.
want to use native glass, and that's what the FX9 had already been out. And then I forgot who it was that told me. I think it was just one of my followers that just randomly said, man, if you sell the FS7, the FS5, all your lenses, you could have enough money to get the A7S III, the FX9, and several full frame native Sony glass. And that, I don't know why I didn't think about that before. So
Is that what you did?
that's exactly what I did. I put everything on the market, sold it all. And sure enough, I had enough money, more than enough money to get the FX9, the A7S III, and several full frame Sony native glass.
It's amazing. I'm glad you got the FX9 because I have been hearing mixed reviews of the FX6. Even though it's a great camera, I feel like the A7S III is just such a good performing camera as is that you don't necessarily need the FX6.
You don't. If the the thing is, the FX6, it's like Philip Bloom said, it's a strange camera because it fulfills everything that the A7S III has, but where it lacks is, if you're going cinema, man, I can't go from the FX9 to the FX6. I don't know how Philip Bloom's doing it, but the custom buttons is so essential because there's so many features on the autofocus that you can really use and assign to custom buttons that it's almost absolutely necessary, because to be able to change that with the push of a button to go to the dual native ISO, to go to the kind of autofocus zones and go from eye autofocus to different autofocus modes, and to be able to move the whole thing around, it's almost absolutely necessary. And then the FX6 has like maybe 2 or 3 custom buttons from 10. It's a huge downgrade. And then, that the thing with the top handle that a lot of people complain about, that the XLRs are only on the top handle, there's not one on the body. It's with the A7S III, like with the FX9 A7S III, I have everything I need. If I need the 4K 120, the FX9 doesn't give it to me, it's fine. The A7S III gives it to me. So I have everything I need. I'm not lacking anything, which is why I love the 6K sensor. When I'm editing, I can see the difference in resolution.
No, you're missing an A1. That's all you're missing. 8K.
I'm not getting the A1. I am not going that route. Man, I just think what I could do with that money, man. I would just get an A7R. Like, A7R? Yeah, A7R. But man, it's just a lot of money. And like you said, it's a very niche camera for a certain industry, and it looks like it's that sports
photo,
live sports photo video, really.
And YouTubers who are gonna review it like crazy over the next couple months, and it'll probably be a big topic.
I'm surprised that no YouTuber has already come out with a review on it. Have they?
Yeah, no. I mean, Jason Vong was featured in one of the promotional videos, but they didn't send it out to anybody.
Yeah, but usually when a camera drops, you'll see like 20 YouTubers at the same day.
Yeah,
with their reviews already made.
I know that they're interviewing like I know Sony is interviewing with some creators today, so we'll probably be seeing some news about it, but I don't know when it's shipping. I don't know when people are getting them in hand to review it. I'm sure they've obviously planned it out. Sony's good at all this, and we'll be seeing a bunch of influencers with it soon.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, man. It's awesome having you. Can you remind everybody where they can find you?
I'm on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Dave Maze. Just search Dave Maze, DAVEMAZE, and you'll see me there. Be on the lookout on my personal channel, Dave Maze. It's going to be brought back to life. There's about 5,000 subscribers on there, and I haven't posted anything in like a year, but I'm going to be active there soon, so be on the lookout for that. So
Awesome. Thanks a lot for coming on the show, buddy. I'll see you next time.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot.
So there you have it. That is my conversation with Dave Mays. It was a tricky one. We were back and forth, as you saw. We were trying to figure out what this camera was for, who it's for, why is it priced so much. If you guys have questions, comments, concerns about this episode, some things that maybe we discussed and we probably got wrong, let us know. You can reach out to us over on Instagram. We're very active there at iFilmmaker Podcast, and Dave was able to plug in a lot of his stuff. So make sure I'm putting links to all of that in the show notes for this episode, whether you're on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasting. Don't forget to like, subscribe. We appreciate you guys tuning in on this episode, and I'm very eager to know what you guys think about this camera. Let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching this episode of the iFilmmaker Podcast. My name is Ariel Martinez. We'll see you on the next one.